Hello, Thunder Wizards. Today I want to talk to you about the meaning of Odin's, quote, sacrifice on the world tree. And we're going to examine the question, can we become gods? And what does Odin's sacrifice on the tree, what does it teach us about becoming a god? So we're going to talk about a few different things. Before we do, first off, neo.thunderwizard.com. Go check that out for the 4 tools necessary, in my experience, to get the most out of this earthly incarnation. Courses.thunderwizard.com. You can find all of my books, all of my DVDs, all of my services, all of my video streaming teachings, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell button. And before we go further into the teaching, I wanted to say a thank you to Grace Channeler. She is one of the higher level subscribers and is a producer. So I'm listing her here as a producer, and you can check out her website right here, gracechanneler.com. All right. A lot of changes coming, by the way. I shouldn't say changes, a lot of upgrades coming to the teaching, because as I go through upgrades, that's going to be reflected in the things that I teach and give to you. So, Odin. What is the meaning of Odin's sacrifice on the world tree? Can humans become gods? You see that picture there? I didn't get a traditional picture of some bearded guy in medieval Norse costume actually hanging upside down on a real physical tree. I gave you that because that, to me, is my experience of Odin. When I tap into Odin, that experience of just pure being and pure light exploding into all directions, so much so that you can't even see the identity of the individual. The ecstasy of connecting with all things. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I've got some notes here to keep me on track here. All right, so I'm seeing myself and I want to adjust my collar because I still have an ego. All right, so can humans become like Odin? So I want you to ask yourself that question. Can you do that? Do you believe it's possible for you to have that experience that Odin had when on the Tree of Life, when he completely ascended to his highest possible expression of himself, so much so that he barely has any ego left. There's just enough ego left to keep him connected to an identity. Because without it, he would just merge into infinity. And so now we want to talk about, what are gods? What are deities? So before I do that, let's talk about what Odin is not. All right? And this is not just coming from my own personal experience, but it's coming from what is written about him in the lore, in the mythology. Let's talk about mythology for a second. So, mythology is not like the Bible. The Bible, and the reason why this is important, because Westerners have this experience with the Bible, and so neo-pagans and neo-heathens have this reaction to written material. And the first thing that they will say is that the lore, they even put, you won't call it mythology, they call it the lore. So they have this sacredness attached to it, the same way Christians talk about the Word of God. Heathens have the lore. And so what I'm about to say is in contrast to that, because then they will say, well, the lore is not scripture. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's not the Word of God. And then what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of the tyranny of monotheist Christianity, which I firmly believe in. But then they go against themselves, because on the one hand they revere the lore. Is it in the lore? And then at the same time they say that the lore is not the written Word of God. So let's be clear, the Bible is not mythology. The Bible was written, and it's based on a bunch of pre-monotheist Judaic mythology. So it is based on that. So we can't say that it is. I got into an argument with somebody on YouTube comment section, who wanted to say, "Oh, I get," because I was saying, I was getting upset at Christianity. "Oh, I find it funny when people get all bent out of shape out of mythology." And I said, the Bible is not mythology. The Bible was written and was presented to be taken as literal, historical truth. And then this person didn't get that and wanted to hold on to, no, the Bible is mythology. So you have to understand what mythology is. True mythology is not just human beings writing things down in an allegorical fashion. It is not what academia or science wants to say, which is that mythology was primitive man's way of trying to understand the natural world. Nonsense. That's not at all what was going on. Mythology is transmitted, channeled truth that is holographic in nature, that is designed to help humans evolve. And depending on how you choose to interact with mythology, it will have a different effect on you. If it is not channeled, from higher levels of awareness, you want to call it the gods, the ancestors, the elves, if it is not channeled information, it is not mythology and it is worthless. Then it's just interesting stories. Cute, interesting stories you tell your kids, I remember asking my dad when I was a little kid, back in the days when, cigarette lighters were these buttons you pushed into the car and then there was a coil in it. When it got hot enough, it would pop out and then you pulled it out and I don't even know if they put those in cars anymore. But I remember asking my dad what that was, and he joked around and he said, "Oh, there's a little man in there, and when I push it in, he lights a match to it, and when it gets too hot for him, he kicks it out." That's not mythology. That's just a cute story that your parents tell little kids. And I laughed. I knew that wasn't true, but then I imagined that there was a little man in there with a match, and I thought that was really fun and cute. That's not mythology. And that's what people are saying. Mythology is a way for those primitive people to understand the forces of nature. It's very condescending. Mythology, if it is not transmitted information from the gods, from the ancestors, in a holographic form, that is timeless. That's the other thing about mythology. If it's dated, and if by talking about a mythological story, it doesn't translate because it's too dated, it's not mythology. Mythology is timeless. And it is given in a holographic form to humans. The gods can see the future and the past, and they can see how it will translate through time. That is mythology. So we are going to find out what Odin is based on mythology. So when I say I'm going to analyze what Odin is based on the mythology, that is my viewpoint. You are free to accept or reject it. So what Odin is not. Odin is not a flesh and blood human. I may have said something similar along those lines. I'll get into that, but the reason why I'm saying that is because, later on in medieval times, there are people who want to claim to be descended from Odin. But that's something that was done later. That was a post-Christian thing where kings and people of importance want to hold on to their power, and so they want to say, I'm descended from Odin, therefore I should be king, or whatever it is. But Odin is not a flesh and blood human. Odin is not a flesh and blood guy with a long beard and a pointy hat, sitting up somewhere on some planet or on some cloud somewhere. That's not what Odin is either. What are deities? Odin is a deity. Odin is a god. What are deities? Well, when I think of deities, there are two types. There's the celestial gods, the gods who dwell in timeless perfection of the brilliance of their essence. We would call these the Aesir. We would call these the Devas in uh, the Vedic tradition. And then there are the Vanir, the gods who dwell within terrestrial time and space, who are gods of experience. These would be, we call the Vanir. The Vedic tradition, unfortunately, this is one thing where unfortunately, they have twisted it a little bit. They call them Asuras. Asuras is translated as demons, and they're seen as negative forces, but in reality, the Asuras are the Vanir. They are gods and goddesses who live within three-dimensional space-time and have experience. They have wisdom through experience, and that's why they're the gods of fertility, the gods of pleasure, the gods of magic. So Odin is an Aesir. Odin is a Deva. Odin is a celestial deity, meaning that his essence lives in a state of timeless perfection. And so the question is, can we become that as humans? The other question is, are you a Deva, an Aesir that has descended into human form? That's a worthwhile question to ask yourself. So when we're talking about the essences, when we're talking about Odin, when we're talking about Thor, when we're talking about Tiu, when we're talking about Zeus, when we're talking about Indra, when we talk about deities like this, we are talking about these kinds of deities that represent timeless perfection of their essence. And so they, in their essence, when we experience them in our limited human form, they transform us. They literally, their light of them is so bright that they begin to, it's like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they open the ark and, whoever it was opens their eyes and their eyes burn out of their skull and their flesh peels off. That's what the deities, that's the effect that they have on us. Odin is one of those. So the question is, how do you become like Odin? Can we do that? To what extent can we be like that in this flesh and blood essence that we sit here as human beings? And I have not yet let go of the idea of transforming myself from a physical limited being to an immortal, to you want to call it having the light body, or having the golden dragon body, or whatever word there is out there to talk about this, to change our energy to such a degree that we can become beyond our limitations. I can't take that at the moment. I can't answer that call at the moment because I'm talking to you. All right, so then the question of how to transform ourselves into the essence of a deity. So in other words, to go back a little bit, that's why Odin can't be some bearded guy who was a king somewhere. That's why Odin can't be a flesh and blood human sitting on a cloud somewhere, looking down at people. He can't be that. Because if he was that, he would not be the essence of his name. He is the essence, the highest, the purest essence of what he embodies. For instance, Thor. Thor is the lightning god, and he represents everything. He is lightning, he holds lightning, and he represents what lightning is. Lightning is transformation. It's a destructive force that destroys negativity, destroys limitations, and transforms you to a higher level. And that you see in his name. So in order to understand a deity, you must understand the meaning of the name. This is why I get annoyed when people think that Frigga and Freyja are the same goddess. Why they think that Odr and Odin are the same god. Why they think these kinds of very limited, just childish names mean something, especially when we're talking about gods, goddesses, even demons. Their names have value and meaning, and if you don't understand what the name means, you will not understand the deity. Thunar, the Lord, Nar, this first cause, Nar, of Thu. Thu is the mind, is ambrosial nectar. So Thunar is the Lord of the moon. Thu is also lunar energy, literally essence of the moon. The moon is the mind. The mind is not the intellect. The mind is that part that reflects, that connects, that creates expansion and awareness, and is also strongly connected to emotions. Thunar is the Lord of those. That's why he's seen as being so emotionally charged. He is the Lord of emotions. He is a god of the mind. Mind is not intellect. When I say mind, most Westerners think of intellect. Intellect means that which picks apart. You have to have a good intellect to be able to read a book. The word to read, leggere, means to pick out from among. You are picking out symbols and creating words and creating meaning to those words and reading symbols and picking apart a code and creating language. That takes intellect. You have to figure out how to drive a car. Which side of the street do you drive on? I have to keep telling myself that because I've lived in the United States all of my life except for the past few months, and every time I get in the car I have to literally tell myself, you drive on the left side of the road. I have to tell my intellect that. I have to figure it out. The mind is something else. I say this to you because Odin is a god of the intellect. He is the human intellect that has merged with the highest essence of inexpressible truth, inexpressible wisdom. So we have these clashing of two things where you have the intellect, which is what makes you who you are. Your intellect says, I am this, I do that, up is up, down is down, left and right, good and bad. These things limit us into three-dimensional reality. That's why we have to have an ego. If you don't have an ego, a self, you can't live in three-dimensional reality because you would merge with all of infinity and there would be no need for you to be your own human self in this world. Odin is a god of the intellect, but he is the intellect, he is the self that has gone as far as is possible into infinite connection with infinity and still holding on to an identity. That's why Odin is in this state of inexpressible ecstasy all the time. His name is Woden. Wod. Wod is the word woe. Whoa. That's the essence of it. The awe, the mystery of existence. So what you hear is what Odin says as he experiences, becomes, and sees the essence of all existence. He goes, whoa. He's in that constant state. I am giving you a much milder experience of it, but this is why it's seen as madness, not madness of anger or rage in the human sense of the word, but when we look at it, we see somebody who is frenzied. But the frenzy is the intensity of the experience of, whoa, being fully inflamed with the experience of self-awareness and connection to infinity. Odin has seen that he is everything, that he is infinity, and he is burning from within the experience of knowing and experiencing that on a constant basis. So when I say to you, is it possible to transform ourselves into the essence of a deity? Woden did this very thing because his name is made up of two pieces. First one is Wod, which is the frenzy, the inexpressible ecstasy of union with one's infinite being, which is the infinite being of all things in all universe. This is why it's impossible for worshippers of Odin to be racists. It's impossible. This is just the antithesis of Odin, because Odin sees himself in everything and everybody, every rock, every mineral, every tree, every bird, every animal, the ocean, the sky, the stars, all humans. You know, when Odin, Vili, and Ve created humans in the mythology, it didn't say Odin, Vili, and Ve created Northwestern Europeans. It said the ash and the elm, man and woman. They created the essence of human beings. So you can't be a worshiper of Odin and be a racist. At the very least, if you want to be a racist, own that and find another god. Just because Odin was the god that some white people worshipped does not mean that Odin is the god of white people. You know, are you really that stupid? I don't think you are. But if you want to hold on to that, I will, and the rest of us will see you as a cretin, an idiot, an imbecile, a child, a frightened individual who can't make logical sense of what's being presented to them. So Woden transformed himself into the essence of a deity. It means he was worshiping Wod. He was worshiping the essence of the ecstasy of self-awareness. And we know that existed because Od, or Wod, is the husband of Freja. Now here's the thing, mythology would be very clear. Again, this is when I get frustrated at the stupidity and the superficiality, the laziness of people. People go, oh, we look and here Freja's worshiping Od. Od sounds like Woden because Odin starts with Od. So they must have made a mistake, and they must really mean Odin. And now they've made two. Come on, man. Put some effort into it. Just try a little bit. See mythology for what it is. It is the holographic transmission of knowledge to human beings from the gods, the elves, the ancestors. They know exactly what they're doing. If it's just a cute story, it's not. It's not mythology. So Od is a deity in its own right, the pure essence of highest awareness of self. Wod. And here we have a god, Woden, he who consists of, because Wod means what I just told you, and then the suffix n means comprising of, made of. I have a table here made of wood. I would call it a wood-n table. It's a table made of wood. You have a golden ring. It's a ring made of gold. Woden is he who consists entirely of Wod. So this means that if Woden is the being who sacrificed himself on the tree of life, as the result of that self-sacrifice, he became aware of the runes. He discovered the runes. He didn't invent them. He didn't create them. He discovered them. Screaming, he took them up. So we have to look at his sacrifice on the tree of life. And again, people want to compare him to Jesus. There's one huge difference. Number one, Odin existed long before the Jesus myth was ever created. I do not believe the Jesus story to be mythology. I believe it to be made up from human desire to control people. I do not believe it was transmitted by anybody. It may have been drawn from other sources like Egyptian and whatnot. But we know for a fact that Jesus never existed. In case you're new to my channel, watch my video on Did Jesus Ever Exist? Because he didn't. The stories about Jesus of Nazareth were not written down until 200 years after his supposed sacrifice, and the town of Nazareth was not founded until around 200 years after his supposed sacrifice, which means that people wrote a story about a guy and placed him in a town that was in front of him at that time, which was Nazareth. Nazareth didn't exist when Jesus was supposedly alive. Therefore, it is impossible for Jesus of Nazareth to have existed according to that tradition. So that goes against the whole idea that the Bible and the New Testament is the inerrant, historically accurate Word of God. It's made up, fictional. It's just a fictional story. It's not mythology by any stretch of the imagination. Woden, therefore, is an entity whose identity was completely, totally transformed and replaced with Wod. He was Woden. The tree of life is nothing other than the spinal column. And the spinal column is where the human personality, the psyche, the energy of Shakti. Remember, Shakti is downward energy that manifests. Desire. So Shakti is the feminine aspect, the goddess of Maya, illusion. And so the Shakti seeks to entrap the attention in the material illusion. Ideally, it wants to entrap it in a game. That's why I call it a video game. Because Maya is a game. Lila. This is the goddess Lila, means to entrap you into the game. It's not real. This human reality that we experience is a construct. It's a construct of the human psyche. It's a construct of the Shakti. The Kundalini in your spinal column is the psychological essence of you that seeks to become aware of itself within the Maya, the illusion. That is why the East Indian tradition focuses so heavily on the chakras. The chakras are points on the spinal column where we mature, where the psyche goes through spiritual transformation. And I've made videos about that. What each of the chakras are. People want to focus on opening the chakra. You know, great. Your chakra is going to open just by becoming a mature individual. Whatever powers you get, you know, that's really not the point of any of that. I'm going to focus on my heart chakra. I'm going to focus on my third eye. People want to focus on their third eye. Well, you know, what's the point of focusing on your third eye if you haven't learned how to be comfortable in your physical surroundings at the root chakra? Well, are you still wanting to have money? Are you still wanting approval? Are you still desperately seeking to find love? Well, fine, experience that. Those are the lower chakras. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't start trying to open up your third eye if you're still complaining about not having enough money. Learn to experience the root chakra and learn to have things and have money and be comfortable in your physical surroundings. You can get to your third eye eventually. If you try to open your third eye when you haven't even learned how to fully open your root chakra, then you're just asking for trouble. You're going to make yourself insane. So Woden is he who has transformed his Shakti. This is why Woden carries a spear. What is the name for spear in the Vedic? Shakti. Shakti means that which shakes. It's just exactly what it sounds like. It comes from that same root word. And in times past, spear, by the way, the spear was the most used weapon. And it was the most deadly weapon. Swords are cool. And nobody likes good sword play more than I do. But the person who would win on the battlefield was the guy with the spear. That's why they put him in the front. Guys with the spears won all the battles. And you took somebody who didn't have any experience in warfare and gave him a spear and put him next to a guy with a sword, he will beat the guy with a sword every time. I watched a video of reenactors, and they did just exactly that. They took people who didn't know what they were doing and gave them a spear and put them up against somebody with a sword and a shield, and people who knew how to fight with a sword and a shield, and guess what happened? The spear won every time. Every time. The sword and the shield was after you've gone in and your spear had gone in and it's been broken in half and you've broken through the lines and now it's hand to hand, then you pull out your sword. So Woden is a spear. His weapon is a spear. And one of the things that those ancient warriors would do is they would line up on the battlefield. Imagine thousands of spearmen, which, by the way, some people think that's what the German name was. The Germanic warriors, German, spearman, because that was the weapon of choice for the tribal Germanic warriors, was a spear. So of course they would connect this to their favorite god, which was Odin. But when you get all those people, what they do is they shake the spear, and the sound of those sharp tips going through the air makes this, and it creates this whole buzz. So if you've got thousands of people doing it, you hear this. It was used to frighten the enemy. This is Shakti. When you shake the spear, it makes that noise. And what is it that people talk about when their Kundalini is awakening? They feel their spinal column shake as the Shakti is winding its way up the spinal column. I could do that right now. I can get myself, just by closing my eyes and breathing, I can start, I won't be trying to, but my body will start going in a circle like this. That's the Shakti moving through the spinal column, shaking the spear. Woden. So it means that he who has fully activated his psychological energy, the energy that has bound him to this illusion, this Maya, and he has seen his true essence of his true self. And what is happening is now he is shaking. And he died to himself. Again, the difference between Jesus and Odin is that Jesus died for your sins. That is just so condescending. So condescending. You can't do it yourself. Here, let me do it for you, you stupid human. Woden, he died, he sacrificed himself, small s, to himself, big S. He sacrificed himself to himself. And that sacrifice on the world tree, his spinal column, his ego, he spiritualized his ego to such an extent that his limited ego disappeared. And all that was left was Wod. He worshipped Wod to such an extent that he became Wod. He is Odin. And the reason why he is worshipped and not Wod is because Wod is the essence. But Odin worshipped Wod to such an extent he became Odin, which means that we can be that because Odin is our example. As opposed to Jesus, who was not our example. Jesus did it for you because, according to the Christian tradition, God the Father hated you so much, even though he created you, and apparently chose to create you imperfect, where you can't perfect yourself. He chose to create that and then hate you for it. And then he took his perfect son and ritually slaughtered, and I'm just telling you what the Bible says, he took all of his rage for your sins against you and focused it on his perfect son who did nothing wrong. And so Jesus' sacrifice on the cross was having to endure the infinite wrath of his own Father for all of humanity. I'm sorry, but there's nothing more abusive and narcissistic than that. That's Jesus. And people are, Jesus loved you so much, he died for you. Odin says, I love you so much, I would never even think of dying for you. You get to die for you. You get to die to yourself. You get to transform yourself. And he is an example of that. He did that not for you, but for himself. And with that example, you can follow that example and become like him. You can also do what he did. You want to become Odin? You can do that. Sacrifice your ego. Worship and focus on Odin to such an extent that you sacrifice your sense of self to become him. So that whole idea of transforming yourself to your higher essence, I'm going to be talking about that more and more because this is something that I'm exploring within myself. To allow myself to focus on the highest ideal of the divine, of the celestial deities. There's a specific essence of deity that I'm focusing on that I am going to begin the process of seeking to bring that more into me, to transform my identity into that of the deity. We'll find out what happens. But I believe that is exactly what Odin did. Odin sacrificed himself to himself on the tree of life, which is his own Shakti, his own Kundalini, his own psychological awareness of self in the Maya of illusion, and he saw the illusion, and he let go of those attachments to the Maya, to the illusion, to the weird. That's what weird is. W-Y-R-D. Weird is just that. It's Maya. It's illusion. It is the three norms. They're not even goddesses. They're giantesses that even the gods must obey. The goddesses of fate. The giantesses of fate. Where the present moment, which is a giantess, in the present moment we have thoughts, we have reactions, we make choices, we have beliefs, we create attachments. Those things create a past, which we call origins. The origins creates a future, which we call debt. Karma. Karma is nothing more than that. Karma is simply the result of your actions, beliefs, and attachments in the present, which create a past. The past creates a debt that you must pay in the future. Whether that's positive or negative, or pleasant or unpleasant, that's a whole other story. But that is Maya, that is illusion, that is, they're giantesses, they're Shakti. If it was masculine, we would call them giants, but they're not. They're feminine. And anybody who knows, the farther you go back, you find that our ancestors understood that the feminine has far more power than the masculine. The masculine provides direction, which is why the feminine worships the masculine. But the feminine worships the masculine only if the masculine earns that by being strong and true and hard, direct in its focus and its direction. That inspires the feminine to surround and protect and empower. Our ancestors understood the power of the feminine. So much so that the forces that even the gods themselves could not overcome were the feminine powers of present, past, and future. So, what are some things we can do to become like Odin? Well, this is where I find Vedic astrology becomes very helpful. Courses.thunderwizard.com. You can find my astrology there. I find it very helpful, and I've discovered a new technique which I didn't know before, which is you can find out which planets want to be worshipped with the chanting of mantra. Now, that's different from ritual. Ritual is mantra with offering and facing a direction. So you have sacrifice and ritual and symbolic worship. But there are some planets that just want you to walk around and use chanting to activate them. So that would be one way. Chanting of runes is one way. Probably, I don't want to make comparisons, but my personal experience is that I chant runes very sparingly, because when I chant them, the power of them is so intense that it really does transform me. And if you go here again to courses.thunderwizard.com, the rune certification series, where I go through all of the runes, I even start talking about, okay, I'm going to go through each one of the runes. And then as I started doing that, I started saying, I'm now experiencing every one of these runes. And, some of them you don't necessarily want to experience unless you've chosen to, like the Yuhuaj rune, which is the rune of the yew tree. Looks like a hook. It comes up, down, and then, it goes up, and then down, and then back up again. And it represents the yew tree, which dies to itself. I mean, the reason why yew trees grow is that it comes up the middle, and then the middle dies, and it gets wider, and it gets hollow on the inside. The branches go down to the ground. They go underneath the ground. They become roots for other yew trees that come up. It represents dying to self and being resurrected. In fact, when you go, if there's a grove of yew trees, they might just be one tree. That is a rune that I don't want to experience unless I have consciously made the decision to go through that transformation. Very challenging, dying to self. So for me, the runes are one way that you can access and become like Odin, because Odin is the master of the runes, which means he can chant the runes fully, and he has no negative or challenging experience because he has nothing that he's attached to. He's only the full expression of the ecstasy of self-awareness. He is completely aware of the illusion of the idea of self and the idea of this world, and so nothing phases him. That's why he is able to, with Sleipnir, who has 8 legs representing each of the 8 external worlds. This is of Sleipnir as well. All of these are one of the legs of Sleipnir. In the middle is Odin, who sits in the middle of it, and he can go to each one of the 9 worlds, because there he has no limitation. That's why he's the representative of the north. Mercury and Odin are guardians to the direction of the north, because the north is the waters of life. The waters of life are poisonous to humans because they are pure potential. We're not pure potential, we have limitation. We have solidified into a being, an identity, time and space. If we were to go to Niflheim, the realm of the waters of the north, we would be torn apart. because that hasn't been manifested yet. Odin is the guardian to that because he can go there, hold on to his very tiny fragment of whatever's left of his identity, and come back. And so if you travel to the north, have Odin take you there, because he can protect you with his identity of infinity. He can protect you while you're in that realm. So you're getting a better idea of who Odin is and what worshiping Odin. Nobody can worship Odin without seeking to become infinite, without seeking to become one with everything. Nobody can worship Odin without being willing to look at their own limitations, without being willing to see themselves in others. Woden is when I experience Woden, I experience a very precocious, cheeky fellow. He's always got a smile on his face, and he's always able to joke about life. He's very similar to Loki. That's why Loki and Odin are blood brothers. They're very similar. Loki is, in fact, the essence of the illusion of Maya. And so Loki is only a trickster if you're attached. If you're attached to the illusion of this reality, then Loki will come and play a trick on you to free you from your illusion and your confusion about who and what you are. Odin isn't the same. Odin doesn't seek to play those kinds of tricks on you, but he certainly thinks they're funny. And he laughs at the antics of Loki. So you can work with the runes. You can do chanting. You can chant the runes. You can chant mantra. But let's look at some practical things, and then we'll get to some more mystical, esoteric things. Self-examination. It's pretty impossible to go through life without being triggered. I have a very hard time with false spirituality. I don't like being around, I make fun of the love and light crowd. I make fun of that all the time because actually I find it quite offensive. And I don't mean to, get angry or denigrate, but I find it offensive because to minimize our pain and our sadness, our confusion, is to minimize our ability to grow. Every time we get stimulated, triggered by our sadness, by our pain, by our jealousy, by our anger, we have an opportunity to go, oh, is that me? Is that really who I am? And then we can see that any of those things is when we're attached to the illusion of the weird, the web of weird. It's called a web of weird for a reason. Those Norns, those giantesses, weave an illusion, which is where we live. Life force energy is woven into this illusion. And it's, your attachment to your illusion of who you think you are. Because you're not. Your essence is Woden. Your essence is to be completely infinite and connected to all things and the power of all of that. That's why Woden is so fearful, because he has so much power, because he has nothing. He is nothing. He has no awareness other than the awareness of everything. He has no identity, no ego. He's not attached to anything. That's why he goes into all, in the mythology, he's always dressing up and masquerading as different people, going around in disguises all the time. It just means that he's not, since he's not attached to who he is, he can go and be anything and be anybody and be anywhere. Because it's all, part of the fun for him, part of the awareness of himself. And so you can look at that, as Odin goes, throughout the world and goes places disguised as something or somebody else. You can do that with yourself. You can go in and talk to the different parts of your personality that is attached, and you can look at it and interact with it that way. So you can do self-examination. Self-examination, whenever you're angry, it's an opportunity to look at your examination. That's, again, why, look, if you want to be a victim, that's your right. If you want to talk about how you've been victimized by aliens, elites, the overlords, the whoever, the Clintons. I don't give a crap who you think has done it to you. If you want to do that, go right ahead. You'll wake up eventually. It might not be in this lifetime, but you'll wake up. But if you want to spend your time doing that, you can. But every time you feel angry, frightened, victimized, abused, those are all opportunities for you to take a look at yourself and laugh at it. I'm not saying to minimize your feelings. You might need to cry. You might need to, work through it. But, do you want to be that? So self-examination, identifying and transforming your attachments. Then we can get into the other, I've talked about this, there are two main ways to achieve the state of Wod. One is self-examination. We've already talked about that. I think that should be done anyway. When you examine yourself and detach from your false attachments, again, I say that and there's just so much of me that just wants to go, please don't be one of those people that just does the superficial wannabe, oh, I'm not attached to that. Now, be honest. Please be honest. It's the fake part of running away from your pain and your feelings is not true transformation of your attachments. You have to allow yourself to have all of your feelings. Again, let me give you my definition of enlightenment. My definition of enlightenment is being aware of all of your thoughts and feelings, no matter how lower they are, no matter how painful, and still having the awareness to take constructive action. Taking constructive action regardless of your feelings. And most people take action based on their feelings. They are driven by them. And then people want to have no feelings. People think enlightenment is having no suffering and having no feelings. Have you achieved that? I don't believe that you have, because if you have, you would not be in your physical body. You have to have something weighing you down in order to be human that attaches you to this illusion. The other method besides doing self-examination is doing some kind of energy work that raises the vibration of your energy to a point where those imperfections, those denser, lower vibrational things within you become dislodged, and then you become aware. Which means that when you're going through an awareness transformation, you become of things that make you angry, that make you sad, that make you frightened, which is why spiritual practice can be very frightening. Real energy work. Again, this is the difference between using chemicals or using entheogens to have spiritual experiences. Those spiritual experiences are forced upon you, and you crack your aura wide open to have a spiritual experience, but you can't control if you're having one based on awareness or based on you're just being thrust into your own unconscious illusions. And repeated use of entheogens and chemicals, in my experience from observing others as well as my own personal experience, is that it just really just lodges you more deeply into your unconsciousness. And what ends up happening is that your vibration keeps going down because you're forcing your brain to release the DMT and the other chemicals that are part of the experience of spiritual experiences. But when you do things like Qigong, high-level meditation, yoga, things that connect you to life force energy, then as you connect to the vibration of whatever it is, the earth or the sky, because you can do Qigong that connects you to the earth. You can connect to celestial power. You can connect to all kinds of different things. Mantras will do this as well. Then your vibration will match that vibration, and those denser things will become dislodged, and you will become aware, which means you'll become frightened, you'll become angry. And this is why, having a Kundalini experience, people go through all kinds of crazy stuff. And they want to think it's spiritual. It's not spiritual. You're cleansing, you're puking. You got to puke before you cleanse. A true awareness is being able to be at the spot where you're aware of all of your feelings, positive and unpleasant, and you take constructive action for yourself and others. That is, you can't get a higher vibrational awareness than that. You can't. Even if you are able to get to a place of enlightenment where you have no problems and everything is love and light, even if you get to that place, it still means that you are aware of what is most constructive for you and for others. That is enlightenment. Nobody can talk me out of that. And I have to say, this is my experience, 56 years on this planet, you know, at least 30, 36 years of spiritual practice. Every single person that I have encountered who wants to portray themselves as having become enlightened, or allows, this is even worse, who allows their followers to present them as becoming enlightened, every single one of them that I've investigated and experienced have been extremely destructive. Even if, you know, they've brought a lot of good to the world. You know, I could name a few teachers. I don't do that anymore, but I could name a few very well-known teachers, some who are alive and some who are dead, who have started very good teachings and movements, and those movements have continued to do very wonderful things. But when you really look at it, you'll find at the inner circle they had a real cult-like following, and there's a lot of abuse, sexual abuse, personal abuse within that. You know, the one that I will talk about because it's become really well known was Carlos Castaneda, one of the most brilliant channelers of mythological knowledge and awareness the world has ever seen. His first few books, you know, towards the end his books start losing it, but his first few books, especially when he starts talking about becoming a warrior, you know, following the path of the sorcerer, the warrior, living with, what do you call it? And he didn't use the word integrity, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Some of the most brilliant writings I've ever seen. Definitely channeled stuff. But the guy was a complete fraud. And he destroyed the lives that were closest to them. In fact, after he died of liver cancer, you know, definitely not something a high level, you know, master of his caliber of who he said he was. I'm not saying that teachers can't die of cancer, because they can. Talking about somebody who says they've achieved this level of blah, blah, blah. That's definitely not how somebody dies. His followers, closest followers, were all women, and they went out, some of them, and committed suicide because he told them to do it. Very destructive individual. But he's a good example. Any teacher that claims to be fully enlightened with no problems and without problems and a perfected person is either deluded or lying or both. So anyway, I got off on that topic. So energetic methods will dislodge the denser attachments, and you will become aware of things that make you uncomfortable, and it can be challenging, but it's the same result. You do self-examination. Every time you let go of a piece of false attachment, false awareness, then your vibration becomes greater. You basically get more room on your hard drive, which means more life force energy comes in. Where you are down to nothing and there's nothing left of your identity, then you have nothing but room for power. And so self-examination gets rid of that, which means more power comes in, which means that your vibration goes up. Qigong, meditation, energy meditation, Negong, yoga, chanting of runes, this kind of energy work brings in higher vibrational energy, which dislodges the more dense aspects of yourself, which you can then become aware of and let go of. There is a danger of becoming a Darth Vader. I've seen it. That whole Darth Vader thing, you know, where the guy just has so much power, but yet is just focused on evil and hate. And I've seen that happen. I've seen people with a lot of power and who were very destructive. So that's the danger of the qigong path, is that, or the high level energy path, which is that you can start gaining a lot of energy, but then if you don't let go of those denser parts of yourselves, it can turn you into a Darth Vader. You can be very destructive. And of course, meditation. Now, there's all kinds of meditation. And I hear people say, oh, I can't meditate because I can't empty my mind. Well, who said you were supposed to empty your mind? The empty mind is the result of meditation. It's not the action of meditation. Meditation, if you're doing mantra meditation, it means you're chanting a mantra. The vibration of the mantra is going into your unconscious, and it is dislodging things, and you become aware, and your world changes, and you change. You can do the Zen types of meditation, or where you sit back and you watch your thoughts as your thoughts come by, and you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting, and you see if you're attached to that illusion, and you can let go of that. You can do visualizations. Taoism has some very, very elaborate visualization meditations, which do all kinds of things and open up things in the brain and do all kinds of great, wonderful things. And there's moving meditation. Tai Chi is a moving meditation. Qigong, high-level energy work, Bagua. These are all moving meditations which tap you into energy, which do the same thing. And then you can just, the meditation of life is, as you're going through life, you watch all of your reactions to people, places, and things. I teach all kinds of different stuff, but there's one thing about all of them that's the same, whether I'm teaching acting, whether I'm teaching drumming, whether I'm teaching internal martial arts, whatever it is that I teach. You will have to watch yourself and your reactions to things, and your ability to progress at anything will be determined on your ability to look at your reactions, to not be attached to them, and to be able to improve, right? I'm trying to think of a specific example. So in terms of the internal martial arts, in order to get the energy to flow, this is a great thing about internal martial arts. You know whether or not you have achieved a level of energy in it because you have to be able to demonstrate it with your strikes. Right? If you're going to just barely touch somebody and have it feel like a bomb is exploding off inside of them, it means you have to be able to deliver that energy. And so you can't fake it. And so that's the great thing, the practical applications of that. That's why martial arts, internal martial arts, Bagua, Tai Chi, the stuff that I practice is really good because you can't fake it. People who just sit around and talk about awareness all day, you can fake it all day long. But, something like that. Drumming is the same. In order to be able to get the right tone out of the drum and to be able to play certain rhythms in a certain way, you have to follow certain techniques. And that's part of the learning process, is being able to do that correctly and being able to put the hand on the drum at the right time in the right order. And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline. And if you're not willing and able to make those corrections, you won't be able to make the right sound, which means that you have to work on yourself in order, when you bump into your inability to do a certain technique, then you have to get over yourself and let go of your attachment and let go of your ego. And, because some people, it's an interesting thing. I went through it too, everything that I've learned, but, martial arts in particular, if I was being taught a certain, even a stance, but a certain move or a certain technique, if I wasn't doing it right, people would say, no, no, no. And the teacher sometimes gets, frustrated, says, no, 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 like this. No, pay attention. Where's your brain? Like this. Move like that. You've got to let go of this. And you have to listen and apply it. But if you've got an ego about it, meaning you're getting, if I, the times that I got personally offended by he's telling me I'm wrong, and if it became about me not wanting to look bad, then you're in conflict with your teacher who's trying to show you something. And so you have to. I had to learn to just let go and just nod my head, even if I thought I knew what he was saying. Or, what students try to do lots of times is they try and go, yeah, I'm trying, but it doesn't matter. You're either doing it right or you're not. And if you do it right, you'll get the results. And if you're doing it wrong, you won't get the results. So it doesn't matter why. So I learned to stop saying, yeah, but. And no matter how challenging it was for my ego, I would listen and I would do my best to go, you know what, don't get offended here. He's trying to teach you something, and this is what you want, so shut up and listen. And I'd shut up and listen and apply the discipline, which is it's growth, letting go of your attachment to who you think you are and what you are. Because the bottom line is if you can't demonstrate it, then it's doesn't mean anything, right? To be able to play this flute, for example. This is I've used this before. This is a good metaphor. So this flute right here, if you can see, it's just an empty tube. That's it. Can you see? It's just an empty tube. There you go. Nothing there. There's no fipple. There's no anything that creates any sound. So the only way to get sound out of this is to be able to split the air in a perfect way right there on this end of the flute. If you don't do that, it won't make a sound. So I can sit here and all day, and if somebody's trying to tell me how to do it, and I'm like, I know, but the reason why I can't do it doesn't mean anything. There's no sound is coming out. The whole point of picking up this flute and playing it is to make a sound. I can't do that if I'm not properly letting the air be split. So and it's challenging. It's really challenging. It was for me anyway, learning how to do that. And still learning how to change the octaves in it and all that, that's really challenging. I got to listen. And I got to be willing to let go of myself and not be, feel stupid or limited or whatever. So that's physical things like that are good when it comes to learning and growing. So anyway, those are just some techniques that we can use. So I think I've said everything I want to say about this. Again, neo.thunderwizard.com if you want to learn the 4 techniques for, in my experience, learning how to master this physical universe. Courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my books, all of my DVDs, all of my videos and video courses and all of my services. Subscribe, hit the bell button. And it looks like that we will be doing live Q&As here soon. Yay. Yeah, keep your eyes peeled. There's more stuff coming. More transformational stuff. I'll just give a hint. I haven't nailed it down yet, but I'm going to start providing services where I am going to offer ways to help you transform. I'll just leave it at that. Ways to help you transform and destroy blocks within yourself to your higher awareness. I'm going to be offering those soon. I'm not going to get more specific than that until I have a better idea of what I'm doing, but that is coming. And that's it. All right, my friends. Talk to you soon.